Well, hello my friends. Welcome to a new year, a new TBR, and I honestly could not be more excited right now. As I was planning this video, I honestly could not believe that another year has come to a close, that I'm sitting here right now talking about some of the first books that I'm planning to read in 2023, and it's just so funny looking back on this year and how my reading went for 2022. It was such a different reading year than I expected, and that's not a bad thing at all because I discovered so many romance books, I dove into the horror genre, I discovered some amazing cozy mysteries, and while I really enjoyed diving more into some new genres and exploring things that I've never read before, I am just itching to pick up a big giant fantasy book, be submersed in a new world, just escape with new characters, and start some really great new series that I am super excited for, but also continue some series that I have been putting off for so long. It's funny because I realized I have not picked up a fantasy book, like a legit fantasy book, since March of 2022. That's a little bit crazy for someone who used to solely read fantasy, manga, graphic novels. It's just crazy to me that I went months and months and months without picking up a fantasy book. So that's mainly what this TBR is going to be, is we're getting back into my fantasy era, we're gonna find some new series that I love. So for this year's goals, I'm not making any big promises to myself, I'm not doing any big challenges. I do have one idea for a challenge, but it's not completely thought out yet, so that may come into play in February. I may just scrap the idea and do some good old TBRs and mood reading, but I do not have any major crazy goals other than I would love to read 100 books again, but I also read 94-ish books in 2022, so I don't see why I can't read 100 books again, and that was without really like trying super hard or keeping track of the amount of books I read each month, which you guys know, I don't do monthly wrap-ups, which that is another thing that I am determined to get back to going into this new year. I would love to just wrap up and talk about all the books I read that month instead of doing recent reads. Those are basically my two big goals going into this new year. I wasn't going to create like a giant video about it or anything. I just wanted to kind of share that I'm hoping to read 100 books and also just get back to those monthly wrap-ups. That being said, let's go ahead and talk about some of my first reads that I'm going to be picking up for the new year. One of the first books that I'm going to be reading that I am so excited about is Gabby Reads asked if I would love to be a co-host for her book club, The Book Troop, in January, and we are going to be reading Wonderland by Jennifer Hillier. Just gonna be honest, I have never read anything by this author yet, which honestly makes me even more excited because I do know this book was published in 2015. I have not seen a lot of people read it. I feel like her other books, you know, they've been part of Book of the Month and they're just way more popular. I'm just gonna be starting fresh in regards to this author. I don't have any other previous experience with her, so I think that is gonna be really interesting. But I'm also hoping that this book is going to be what I wanted from Hyde by Kiersten White. You guys know that made it on my list for the worst books I read in 2022, and this book sounds somewhat similar. There's not exactly a competition involved. An eerie feeling descends. Maybe it's the Clown Museum, home to creepy wax replicas of movie stars and a massive collection of antique porcelain dolls. Or maybe it's the terrifyingly real House of Horrors. Or maybe it's the dead decaying body left in the midway for all the wonder workers to see. There's also an employee of this amusement park that goes missing, and our police officer or investigator, this is her first day on the job, unfortunately, and she actually goes into a deeper dive of the history of this amusement park, and things are a lot more sinister than they appear. And I just think it's going to be a super fun time to chat with Gabby. I believe the live show date is possibly going to be January 29th, so mark your calendars, pick up the book, and I hope you guys will join us. And the first book that I'm going to be picking up in the year of 2023 is drumroll please, Finlay Donovan jumps the gun. I cannot believe I have this arc in my hands. It is number 3, and I could not resist picking this up as my first book because I loved the other 2. The back says dating, diapers, and dodging bullets. Who said single moms can't have fun? I have big expectations for this one. I probably shouldn't because it's a series. Sometimes series go downhill, but I honestly loved the second book as much as the first one. But if you don't know anything about this series, this is about Finlay Donovan, who is a struggling single mom. She's actually a writer who meets up with her agent at a Panera one day, but someone ends up overhearing the plot of her story as she's explaining it to her agent, mistakes her for a hitman, and hires her to go kill someone else's husband. So this is such an unbelievable kind of crazy ride, but that's what makes it so entertaining and so fun if you're just wanting to escape in a funny story and just laugh. I know this is just gonna start off my year right because I already know it's not gonna disappoint, and yeah, I just cannot wait to see what Finlay gets up to in this book. The next book, which I was also considering making the first book I read this year because it is so big, because it is so hyped, because it is a fantasy that I just need to read being a fantasy lover, that is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. I honestly cannot believe that I have not read this yet. I did pick this up a while ago and read a few pages of it, and while I was enjoying it, I was just too busy at the time to dedicate, I guess, a lot of brain power to figuring out this world. I was honestly a little bit confused and frustrated, but I'm willing to hold on. I'm willing to give it a second try. I've also read Skyward and super enjoyed that one, and I've also read some of Warbreaker, which I actually DNF'd only because I had to give it back to my library. I really did enjoy the humor in the world. I thought was super intriguing. I think I also convinced my friend Kendall to read this along with me. I also have The Way of Kings, which intimidates me, but I feel like if I can make it through this almost 700-page book, then I will have a little bit more confidence going into some of his other series. Another new release that is coming out in January, I think January 17th. I meant to talk about this right after the new release for Finlay Donovan, but one that is at the top of my list that I will be going into Barnes & Noble the day of is How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. After my best friend's exorcism made my top of the list favorites from this past year, I honestly just fell in love with his quirky humor, his writing. I honestly just think he's so brilliant with the way he tells stories, and this one sounds nothing short of amazing as well. As far as I know, I believe we have 2 siblings whose parents unfortunately pass away during the pandemic. They go back to their childhood house to put it on the market and sell it, but some weird, creepy things start happening. This definitely sounds like a book that kind of explores childhood trauma, and I really have no idea where he's gonna take this story. If this one can top my best friend's exorcism, or at least be up to that level for me, I think I could really enjoy this one. So it is definitely gonna be a top priority for me this month. And the next big giant fantasy book that some of my friends talked me into reading with them that I am extremely nervous about, but I decided to give it a shot because if I'm gonna read something that intimidates me, I'm gonna read it with friends. That way if I don't understand it, don't comprehend it, or just need to rant or like ask questions about it, I feel like that's going to be the best way to read this book. And yes, that is Babel by R.F. Kuang. I know nothing about this book, absolutely nothing. I'm going into this completely blind, completely scared. The only thing that I've heard about it, and people don't even know how to describe this book, so I don't even know how to talk about it, is that it has to do with the translation of languages. I'm also seeing some footnotes in here. So this could either be an amazing book that I fall in love with, that I'm absolutely obsessed with, or it could be one that completely goes over my head, which I'm also terrified terrified about. Overall, this is just gonna be the most intimidating book that honestly I read all year long. And the next big book on my list, which I don't know if this is the best idea I have to knock out some of my biggest books on my TBR the very first month of the year. I'm hoping and praying that it doesn't put me into a slump, but just motivates me to read more, read faster, and just really get through some of these. But I had to add to my list House of Sky and Breath because I started this near the end of last year. Maybe it was at the beginning. I honestly can't remember. I did make it like 50 to 100 pages in. I even marked up every single 100-page mark because somehow that just motivates me to get through it. But obviously I didn't have enough steam or willpower to make it through. I know I'm gonna enjoy it. I have been a little bit spoiled for the ending, which I'm kind of mad about. That's okay. I'm still gonna read it because I love these characters in this world so much. If you've never read this series or you've never heard of it, which I would be absolutely shocked if you hadn't at this point, the first book follows Bryce Quinlan as she kind of goes on this hunt to figure out a killer who killed some of her friends. So you not only have this very intricate fantasy world, but you also have a kind of mystery suspense along with the story. So I cannot wait to see what kind of story and what kind of elements Sarah J. Maas weaves into this book as well. And I just need to catch up with the times. I meant to read this while everyone else was reading it. I just really want to make series a priority this year as well, and I just feel like this is going to be a good place to start. So last year, my first book that I read was a Shea Ernshaw book, and I thought it would be super fun to add another Shea Ernshaw book to my January TBR. I love her atmosphere and her writing is so beautiful, and I have really high hopes for this one, but the synopsis is very confusing. I honestly couldn't tell you anything about what this book is, so I'm gonna read some of the inside. Vega has a secret. She's the last astronomer, a title carried from generation to generation, and she's the only one who understands the knowledge of the stars, knowledge that could hold the key to a cure. So when locals spot the tattoo on Vega's neck in the shape of a constellation, chaos erupts. Fearing for her life, Vega is rescued by a girl named Cricket who leads her to Noah, a boy marked by his own mysterious tattoos. On the run from the men hunting her, Vega sets out across the plains with Cricket and Noah in search of a fabled cure kept secret by the astronomers. But as the line between friends and protectors begins to blur, Vega must decide whether to safeguard the sacred knowledge of the astronomers or if she will risk everything to try and save them all. This kind of sounds sci-fi-ish because we talk about astronomers and the stars, and I just don't know what I'm gonna think about this magical world and magical system. It already feels very confusing to me, but I already think I'm gonna love the characters just from reading the synopsis. I had to add this to my TBR for the month because I'm just very intrigued and curious about it. It's been sitting on my shelf, and my friend Keisha actually got this for me for Christmas, so thank you, Keisha. But she also wants to buddy read it, so hopefully that's a good time, and if anything is too confusing or weird or whatever, I have someone to chat with about it. So I think it's just going to be a really fun time. And the last big book I'm going to pick up, because my friend Rachel convinced me to pick up Gilded by Marissa Meyer, and I am very skeptical and scared of this one, but she knows my taste well enough to know that I'm probably gonna like this one. The reason why I'm scared is because I did not like the Lunar Chronicles. I tried reading, I think, was it called Renegade? Did not like that one. I DNF'd that one, and this is going to be hopefully third time's a charm. I think I am gonna like it though because it's a very dark retelling of Rumpelstiltskin. This is just going to be a very dark book, but I think it's gonna be one that I am very intrigued by and won't be able to stop reading. So I'm giving this another chance. I'm gonna read it and we will see what happens. Switching gears a little bit here is a book book I have not seen anyone stop talking about, and I think this actually won a Goodreads award this year. That is The Measure by Nikki Erlick. My friends Jordan and Gwen especially have convinced me to knock this up higher on my list because it really sounds like something I would enjoy. I love a good like dystopian sci-fi book every once in a while, and who knows, maybe this will spark my interest to go down a rabbit hole of sci-fi kind of dystopian books in 2023. 8 Ordinary People, One Extraordinary Choice. It seems like any other day. You wake up, pour a cup of coffee, and head out. But today, when you open your front door, waiting for you is a small wooden box. This box holds your fate, the exact number of years you will live. From suburban doorsteps to desert tents, every person on every continent receives the same box. Where did these boxes come from? What do they mean? And is there truth to what they promise? Yeah, this just sounds very fast-paced, super thrilling. I'm very intrigued to see who sent these boxes, what's going on. Is it aliens? Is it the government? Who knows? But I am going to find out for myself. You guys know I could not get away with adding a cozy mystery to my TBR, and this one has been so high on my list because I've heard Amanda Flower is amazing. That is Crime and Poetry, a magical bookshop mystery. Rushing home to sit by her ailing grandmother's bedside, Violet Waverly is shocked to find Grandma Daisy the picture of perfect health. Violet doesn't need to read between the lines. Her grandma wants Violet back home and working in her magical store, Charming Books. It's where the perfect book tends to fly off the shelf and pick you. Violet has every intention of hightailing it back to Chicago, but then a dead man is discovered clutching a volume of Emily Dickinson's poems from Grandma Daisy's shop. Now, with the help of a tuxedo cat named Emerson, Violet will have to find a killer to keep Grandma from getting booked for good. Does this not just sound like the perfect cozy mystery for a fantasy lover? I have also been itching like crazy to pick up some more graphic novels and manga, but I feel like it would be a very good idea to break up all of the big chunky books I have with graphic novels and manga, starting with volume 3 of Lore Olympus. I love this series so much, and while it is very problematic, it's triggering. There's even trigger warnings from the author at the very beginning of each book, which I think is so great. It's kind of like a guilty pleasure for me. The artwork is just so stunning. It's more along the lines of pink, blue, and purple. You have all of these Greek gods and goddesses fighting, but it's kind of in modern day times, so it makes for a very interesting twist on your typical Greek mythology. And the next graphic novel I'm going to pick up is a middle grade one by one of my favorite authors. I read The Seance Tea Party I think a couple years ago, one of my top favorite books of the entire year, and somehow I was unaware that she wrote another graphic novel, and that is My Aunt is a Monster. I'm not sure if it's Safia or Safia. She thought that being blind meant her life would be free from real-world adventures, but when she moves in with an aunt she's never met, Walteran Haken Whimsy, the world's greatest adventurer, she discovers that adventure has a way of finding you. Aunt Whimsy tells her a secret. Years ago, she was in an accident that left her disfigured. What she doesn't tell Safia is that she was actually cursed to live as a blue-horned monster and has been in hiding ever since. When Whimsy receives news that threatens her legacy, she reluctantly bounds back into action, and Safia finally has a chance for true adventure. Too bad secrets aren't the only thing they have to worry about catching up with them. This book sounds so incredibly sweet. I have never read a story where the main character is blind. I think that's going to add such a unique twist on this book, but also just be super great representation, especially for younger kids out there. I also have this inkling that this is also going to be a tearjerker, kind of like The Seance Tea Party, but honestly, I'm so here for that. And look at this spine. Like, I keep getting so distracted by this book. My friend Elizabeth sent this to me because she said she loved it so much and I had to have it and read it for myself, so I am very excited about this one. Diving now into some manga that I would love to dive back into or explore this month is The Savior's Book Cafe Story in Another World. If this doesn't doesn't look like the perfect bookish manga for anyone in your life, I don't know what does, and it obviously looks like a little bit of romance is involved. I had to pick this up immediately. I just know there is a magical bookshop that gets turned into a cozy cafe as well, and this girl ends up running it. So I don't know anything else about it, but it sounds like the perfect cozy time for me. The next series I have to continue, and I don't know why it's taken me so long to finally read this volume, is number 10 of Witch Hat Atelier. This is probably one of my favorite covers so far. This is absolutely stunning, and if you guys have never heard me talk about this before on my channel, where have you been? But also, this is such a perfect beginner manga. I say that all the time, but it really is such a fun adventure. We follow a sweet little girl named Coco who doesn't realize that magic can actually be learned instead of just being born with it, and so she goes to this kind of boarding school with a couple other girls, and they just go on all these fun adventures, but she's also trying to learn all these magical abilities to save her mother because she accidentally banned her mother somewhere. Her mother's missing, and so she's going on this journey to try and find her. But I'm just really excited to continue this series. I don't know why it's taken me so long, but January is going to be the month. I'm also going to be continuing on with Spy Family with volume 8. Again, I'm a little bit behind. I don't know why it's taken me so long to continue this. I think I just got so distracted with like fall reads and Christmas reads that I kind of dropped the ball on manga, but I love this quirky cast of a family. I'm not gonna sit here and spoil anything for you because this is number 8. I'm sure you guys have seen it around. The show is actually on Hulu, which I do highly recommend checking out. This is just such a good adventurous manga if you want to laugh out loud. It's also such a feel-good kind of family-oriented series. It's another good one for beginners. So between these two, if you want to dive into more manga, I definitely recommend them. Alright friends, there you have my very, very big, ambitious, big book TBR to start out the year. I'm definitely a little bit intimidated looking at this now, but I really think that things are going to start slowing down in the winter as they typically do, so I'm hoping I can get through at least half of these, but these are such top priority books for me that if I don't get to them this month, I will most likely be just adding them to my February TBR. I am just so excited to start off a new year fresh, start off with hopefully 5-star reads. I have a feeling these all may be 5 stars. I could be speaking too soon, but I'm just so excited. I haven't been this excited for a TBR in such a long time. You guys will have to let me know what book you are starting this year out with. I need to know what your first book of the year is gonna be. I hope this year starts out as a good one for you guys. Thank you so much also for sticking with me for a whole nother year on BookTube last year. It was definitely a year of growth for me, but I'm so excited to move on into the new year. Go ahead and subscribe and like if you haven't already. That would help me out so much. Thank you for watching this video. I love you guys, and I will see you in my next video.